These are the pre-calc notes, 0.4a. Today we're going to talk about inequalities. So we're going to talk about solving and graphing inequalities. And for inequalities, there are several different ways, different forms that you can write these. So the expression just means it's written in words. So x is greater than -3. The inequality is when we use the symbols. So x is greater than -3. For the graph, we're just going to do a very quick sketch of a number line, put the -3 in the middle, and then graph from there. So if you remember, a greater than or less than symbol is going to have an open circle. And then as long as the x is on the left-hand side, it comes first, the arrow will tell you which direction to point. So we're going to shade everything to the right. And that makes sense because numbers that are greater than -3 would be -2, -1, 0, all the way to the right. And then next one we have is something called interval notation. Interval notation, we did a little bit in Algebra 2. So it's like saying you're going from here to here. So for this graph, we're going from -3. And it looks like that that line is going to go on forever. So in math, we would call that infinity. Now, we're either going to use parentheses or brackets. You're going to use parentheses anytime that you have a less than or a greater than. And that's also when you would use your open circle. And then for your less than equal to, greater than or equal to, that's when you would use your closed-in circle for the graph and your your brackets for the interval notation. So -3 is going to be an open parenthesis because we have an open circle. And infinity is always parentheses. All right, let's take a look at the next one. X is less than or equal to 5. We'll do a quick sketch. Put the 5 in the middle. This is going to be a closed circle. And again, as long as the X is first, the arrow will show you which direction to point. So less than would be numbers that are smaller than 5, which would be to the left. And then for interval notation, this one, because it starts all the way to the left, that smallest number that we know, we call negative infinity. And we're going to go all the way to 5. So infinity, even if it's a negative, always will have a parenthesis. And the 5, because it's a closed circle, we'll use a closed bracket. The next problem, x is greater than or equal to 0. Quick number line with a 0 in the middle. Closed in. And again, pointing to the right as long as the x is first. It's going to point the same way the arrow is going. And then our interval notation, this is going to go from 0 to infinity. From 0 on the left, infinity on the right. Bracket, the closed dot will get a bracket, and infinity always gets a parenthesis. And the last one of these, x is less than -7. Open circle. Again, x is on the left, so we can follow this the way the arrow is going and point it to the left. Interval notation from -infinity all the way up until -7. Parenthesis on infinity always, and because that's open, we use an open parenthesis. So think open parenthesis, closed bracket. All right. Now for the rest of these, this is just going to be a little bit more traditional solving and graphing. So let's try this first one. Solve and graph, and then write your answer to interval notation. So we'll be doing the same thing we did at the chart above. So I'll subtract 1 from both sides. Divide by 2. And there's my inequality. We'll do a quick number line sketch. If you want to add numbers on either side of it, you're more than welcome to, but not necessary. Then we'll go from 6 closed in. And again, X is on the right, so we're just going to go ahead and follow the same direction as the arrow, point that over to the right. And then in interval notation, that would be from 6 to infinity. Close bracket to represent the closed dot, open parenthesis always on infinity. For the next problem, subtract 5. And divide by -3. Remember, when we divide by a negative, you need to flip the inequality. All right. So your inequalities. There we go. Flip your inequality when you divide by a negative. So I'm going to flip the inequality from a greater than to a less than, and then divide out. All right, quick number line. Open and pointing to the left, less than. For the interval notation, since we're starting all the way from the left, our smallest numbers would be -infinity to -7, parenthesis, parenthesis. On the back side, we have a word problem. And remember, we're talking about inequalities here, so this problem should have some sort of inequality in it. 2 rental car companies have advertised weekly specials on full-size cars. You have Hertz advertising an $80 rental fee plus an additional 10 cents per mile. Thrifty, the other company, is advertising $60 and 20 cents per mile. How many miles must you drive for the rental car from Hertz to be the better deal? If something's the better deal, it means it costs less money. Okay. All right, so let's set this up. We've got Hertz and we've got Thrifty. Hertz cost $80 plus 10 cents. And anytime you see per, that usually means an X. Some sort of variable means multiplication. Then you've got Thrifty, 60 plus 20 cents per mile, per again. And how many miles must you drive for Hertz to be the better deal? If you want Hertz to be the better deal, that's going to have to be less than the Thrifty. Better deal means less money. So use the less than sign. And from there, we can just solve it out. I'm going to subtract the 0.10x. That gets me 0.10x. Subtract 60 from both sides. And divide by the 0.10. I'll type that into my calculator real quick. Gets me an answer of 200 is less than x. Now, ideally, anytime I get the x not at the beginning of the inequality, I like to switch it around. So that way the x comes first. X is greater than 200, and we're talking here about miles. So you would have to drive 200 miles, more than 200 miles, for the Hertz car to be the better deal. All right, the last thing we're going to do today is called compound inequalities. So again, you've probably seen this before. It might have been a while. So for our first example, number 4 here, I want you to notice that it's got 3 parts of this inequality as opposed to just 2. You've got 2 symbols here, which I want you to think about as having then 3 distinct parts. And you want to solve from the middle out. So you start by subtracting 4, and then subtract 4 from the front and from the back. So you're trying to get this x by itself. Just bring down your inequality symbols, keep them the same. Again, trying to get the x by itself. All right, so there I have my answer. This reads as -2 is less than x is less than or equal to 4. In other words, x is between -2 and 4. X is between -2 and 4. So as we draw a number line, we'll make sure we put -2 and 4 both on the number line. If you want to fill in the numbers between, you're more than welcome, but you don't have to. And again, we want the space between -2 and 4. -2 has an open circle because of the less than. 4 has a closed circle. And this is the only time that we really don't follow the directions of the arrows. And that's because if you look at this -2 and the x, those are switched around. Normally we can only follow the arrows if the x is first. So what's happening is this one's actually pointing this direction, that one's actually pointing that direction, and so we shade the area between them. If we were going to write this in interval notation, it would go from -2 to 4, open parenthesis, close bracket. The other type of compound inequality happens when you have 2 distinct inequalities with the word or in the middle. So if you have that, you're going to solve each one individually. I always like to write the x first. So I'm going to switch, switch, and switch. Bring down the word or. Divide by -5. Remember, when we divide by a negative, we are going to flip our inequality. Squeeze that in, divide by negative. All right, and so this becomes our answer. So x either has to be a number smaller than 2 or bigger than 5. On a number line, we'd have 2, 5. 2 would be closed. And again, because we move the x to the front, we can follow the direction of the arrow. Let's go to the left, less than. 5 would be open, and it would be following the direction of the arrow going to the right, greater than. And as interval notation, this would have to be written as 2 separate pieces. You would go from -infinity to 2, open parenthesis on infinity always, close bracket. Then you'd write the word or. And you go from 5 to infinity, open parenthesis for the open circle, and always open parenthesis for the infinity.